All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Week 1 recap video. Had a great Sunday of NFL action. Now we get to talk about it, which I think is the most exciting part. is the after effects. How do we deal with this? Do we have knee-jerk reactions? What is the response to what we saw on the field on Sunday? And we'll sort of go through this therapy session together because some of our teams didn't do very well, did they? So we'll begin this with the Packers and the Vikings. Packers win 43-34. Packers get the pennant. I get the red X because I picked this game incorrectly. Rodgers goes off against the Vikings defense, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns. The inexperience in the secondary showed. We were unable to generate a pass rush. I believe it was, 30-some dropbacks or 44 dropbacks, 7 pressures by the Vikings defensive line. Those two pieces of the puzzle do not formulate into a successful defense. I don't care who you're playing against. We just happen to be playing a first ballot future Hall of Famer. And it showed. Devontae Adams is the recipient of that great game by Aaron Rodgers, 14 receptions, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers has basically moved the ball down the field, totally chill with impunity, and there was nothing we could realistically do to stop him. Adam Thielen has a pretty good game, 6 receptions, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. The takeaway, I guess the takeaway from this is, yes, we would want to hit the panic button in this situation, but I mean, honestly, what did you expect? Even from me, who had somewhat higher expectations than most for the Vikings this year, this defense is young. It's completely retooled. It was missing Danielle Hunter. You're going up against Aaron Rodgers, who, despite the criticism that he faces that he might not have it anymore, can definitely still play it at a very high level. So it was kind of in the cards. I just guess I was numb to it because I picked the Vikings to win this one. I didn't think that they would come out with this offensive explosion that they did, but they did, and that's just, it is what it is. Silver lining for the Vikings, I guess, would be in the second half when we had to do what we had to do to keep the game at least within reach. They were able to do that. The offense woke up. It's just a matter of being dominated in terms of time of possession. The Vikings only had the ball for a little under 19 minutes, and that's just not going to be enough to win football games. So a lot of work to do for the Minnesota Vikings heading into week 2. They get the Colts next week, which should be an interesting test. Both teams disappointed, and I think that if they end up losing to the Colts and they go 0-2, we might have some problems. We might be trending in the wrong direction. As far as the Packers go, we're going to need to see this, I think, at least one more time out of this offense, because they're not going to be playing against a very young secondary for the entire season. But overall, pretty good game if you're a Packers fan. Moving on to the Seahawks and the Falcons. Seahawks win 38-25. Seahawks get the banner. I get the red X because I picked this one incorrectly. They let Russell Wilson cook, and cook he did. He gets 322 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns. DK Metcalf, 4 receptions, 95 yards, 1 touchdown. Matt Ryan did what he could to keep them in the game, 450 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. I believe 3 receivers for the Falcons had over 100 yards, so it was quite the passing day if you're a fantasy football player. Jamal Adams was completely unleashed in this game, and you could tell that a change of scenery can do wonders for a lot of people. He doesn't have to deal with Adam Gase no more. He doesn't have to deal with a very, very incomplete roster in New York. He's motivated now. He is with a really good team and an offense that can pick him up. So he was just absolutely all over the field yesterday. Another note that was interesting, I thought, looking at the box score, was that the leading rusher for the Seahawks was Russell Wilson with 59 yards. So if you're a fantasy player again, and you have Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, or Carlos Hyde for some reason, you're a little disappointed in this outcome. But as far as just football goes in general, I think that will sort of balance itself out in the weeks to come. Russell Wilson was just on fire against this Falcons defense, and they did what they had to do. I incorrectly picked this game, and this is one of those things that you kind of work on. Like, you look at what you thought was going to happen. You don't necessarily watch the tape or watch the game again, but you sort of just think about where did you go wrong in your expectations. My expectations was correct, that Matt Ryan was going to have time to throw the ball and not be nearly pressured as much as some other teams did this weekend, but it didn't matter because on the other side of the ball, the defense let them down. So when you have to play catch up for the entire game, because they got down big pretty early, it just goes to show you what it's going to take to win in this league. And if you can't stop on anybody on defense, a la the Vikings, you're not going to have success. Moving on to the Jets and the Bills. The Bills win 27-17. The Bills get the banner. I get the green check mark for predicting this one correctly. The Jets are a bad team. I've been saying that going into the season that they were not going to be good. I projected them to win about 2 games. Adam Gase is my least favorite head coach in the league. I think he's just awful. I think Jets ownership is pretty awful. And I think that is, there's precedent for that argument given the multitude of years that they have not won a division. They have barely been able to get playoff wins. The 2 outliers are, of course, the Rex Ryan years where he had really, really great defenses led by Darrelle Revis and just happened to have Mark Sanchez, who was good enough at the time to manage the offense. So, but this year, just talking about this year and all, it doesn't look good. The defense is bad. There's not a lot that they can do to stop opposing offenses. Josh Allen had 312 passing yards for, I believe it was 2 touchdowns. And the problem with Josh Allen was the 2 fumbles, so he needs to correct that immediately. He needs to be more aware of how he's holding the ball when he's on the move. But for the Jets, Jamison Crowder is the silver lining, 7 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown, but that is only because the rest of the talent around him at the wide receiver position is very thin. So I don't expect the Jets to win very many games this year. There's already talk this morning of Le'Veon Bell potentially missing multiple weeks with the injury. What the injury is, I'm not exactly sure, but the relationship between Le'Veon Bell and Adam Gase probably couldn't be worse at this point, despite what they say in public. I don't believe them. So I expect bad things for the Jets this year, and it's not going to be well. Bills, on the other hand, they handled their business. They look good. The running back committee of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss is intriguing. Zach Moss, of course, gets the touchdown. He got a lot of the goal line work. Stephon Diggs had a pretty respectable game. I think he had like 86 yards receiving. The only criticism I would give would be, once again, to Josh Allen, would be the missed opportunity in the end zone with John Brown when he was wide open, and he completely overthrew him by probably a good 7 feet. So Josh Allen needs to play better, despite having played pretty well against the Jets. There's going to be better teams on the schedule that he's going to need to secure the football a lot better. Moving on, we've got the Bears and the Lions in the next matchup. Bears win 27-23. Bears get the banner. I get the red X because I picked this game incorrectly, and can you blame me? Going into this, I figured Mitchell Trubisky would struggle, even though the Lions secondary is not that intimidating. Yes, Jeffrey Okudah is there, but it's going to be a tough year for rookie corners, unless your name is C.J. Henderson, apparently. But the Bears and Mitch Trubisky managed to pull this one out, and good for Mitch Trubisky for having the line that he did, 242 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. And yes, that was a big heartbreaker at the end for the Lions for DeAndre Swift to drop that critical touchdown pass that would have won them the game. And it's just a tough way to lose. But rookie growing pains are real, and hopefully that will be a good learning experience that'll make him a tougher player, and they'll sort of take this game into the next season or into the next week as motivation. As far as the overall outlook of this, I think the Lions are going to be okay. They didn't have Kenny Golladay. TJ Hawkinson had a decent game. Adrian Peterson had a pretty decent game, 14 carries, 93 yards. The Collins ejection is kind of a joke. I thought the referee flopped on that one. Yes, you're not supposed to touch officials. I do understand that, but at the same time, that looked like a little bit of an act by the referee who just wanted attention. The other aspect that I noted was Anthony Miller had a pretty good day, 4 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown. We've been waiting for his breakout, and maybe it'll happen. Trubisky looked pretty good, and if he can continue to play that way going forward, this Bears team might surprise us. Moving on, we have the Dolphins and the Patriots. Patriots win 21-11. They get the banner. I get the green check mark for accurately predicting this one. Not the most exciting game, but when you run the ball as much as the Patriots did and chewed up time of possession pretty heavily, and of course Ryan Fitzpatrick commits 3 interceptions, you're going to have a one-sided affair that is pretty slow. But props to Josh McDaniels for designing the offense. He had a great day at play calling to highlight Cam Newton's strengths, and he ends up with 2 rushing touchdowns. Ryan Fitzpatrick, of course, has the aforementioned 3 interceptions. He didn't have Devontae Parker for a while, but that kind of opening day performance. Yes, you were facing a really good secondary with Stephon Gilmore and the McCourty twins, but at the same time, I think that puts Fitzpatrick on a shorter leash than we may have thought. They're going to try to get Tagovailoa to have as much time to heal from that hip injury as possible, I believe, but we might be seeing Tua sooner than later. Moving on to the Eagles and the football team. Football team wins 27-17. I get the green check mark for predicting this correctly, and the football team gets the banner for the win. Going into this game, I thought that the Eagles were pretty exacerbated with injuries, and then when it was finally time for kickoff, the injury report came out for the day, and it was worse than I think people would have wanted to see. With Hargrave being out, Alshon Jeffrey, Miles Sanders, Scott gets hurt halfway through the game, so you're down to your third running back and Corey Clement. It felt like Carson Wentz was the catalyst for this matchup, because it felt like he was responsible for pretty much all of the points on the board by the time it was 17-17, throwing for 2 touchdowns and also committing 2 interceptions, which led to football team points. That's a weird way to say that, football team points. Oh, that's bizarre. It's going to be a weird year. But, nothing too exciting about the Washington football team's performance other than that they got the win. Antonio Gibson, for all the hype that he had, 9 carries, 63 yards, pretty pedestrian performance, but what do you expect out of, a college wide receiver that had 33 carries, expected to, sort of carry the load. So I think this is one of those teams that's going to start slow, like a lot of the others, like the Browns and whatnot, and then they'll find their footing as time goes on. For the Eagles, this is pretty disappointing. I think if you're an Eagles fan, you're pretty upset today. There are some silver linings. Jalen Reagor is healthy. Yes, he only had 1 catch, but it was a pretty good catch for 55 yards. The tight ends played out of their minds. Zach Ertz's stat line isn't that impressive, but at the same time, you have some reliable pass catching options over the middle there. So both teams have some stuff to figure out, but Washington gets the upset. Moving on, speaking of upsets, Raiders win 34-30, and it's not an upset because Raiders were the favorite, but I almost got away with this one because I picked the Panthers to win the upset, and it barely happened. Raiders get the banner for the win. I get the red X for incorrectly picking the Panthers. Pretty overall solid game by both teams. Josh Jacobs gets 93 yards, 3 scores. McCaffrey gets 96 yards, 2 scores. 2 critical plays in this game. Number one being Robbie Anderson's 75-yard touchdown catch. That is one of those examples where a stat line lies to you, because he finished the day with 6 catches, 111 yards, and a score. But a majority of that came on 1 play. And 75-yard touchdowns are not something that you can rely on week to week. So we have to take this, sort of in context, if you will, to sort of figure out how this is going to go going forward for this Panthers offense. The other critical moment in the game was the 4th and 1, where the play call was to hand off to the fullback. They get stuffed and turn the ball over. Matt Rule, if I could give you any sort of advice, here's my PSA. This isn't college football. If you want to make a play to get momentum, you have to put the ball in the hands of your playmakers. That being Christian McCaffrey, who was healthy at the time that this play was called, and on the field at the time that this play was called. Use what you have instead of trying to be fancy. You can't just fall over and expect to get a yard. Every yard in this league is earned, whether you like it or not. So hopefully that's a learning moment for him going forward. I mean, just give Christian McCaffrey the football and he'll do stuff for you. My God. So that is my take on that game. And moving on. Colts and the Jaguars. Jaguars win 27-20. They get the pennant. I get the red X because I picked this one incorrectly. And once again, you can't really blame me for that because a lot of people expected good things out of the Colts, and then they come out and they stunk up the place. Phillip Rivers had a stat line that once again lies to you. 363 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He looked like the 2019 Phillip Rivers and not the 2018 one that we thought. There's just too much talent on this Colts team. This offensive line is great. A great stable of running backs. Yes, they did just lose Marlon Mack for the season with a torn Achilles heel, but they've got good wide receivers. He's got a good rapport with Paris Campbell. It's just this team should have not lost this game. So on the inverse of that, mega props to Jacksonville and Gardner Minshew, who goes 19 for 20 for I believe it was 173 yards and 2 scores, 1 incompletion all day. That is very, very good play calling, and that is taking what they give you. The way that they utilized the passing game was very good. I like the way that they used Laviska Shenault yesterday. The only real aspect that I would take away from this is 2 things on the Jacksonville side. One, C.J. Henderson had the interception. The defense played good, but I don't think that this is I don't think this is a sustainable model, is what I'm trying to say. Because one of the reasons is that the running back production is going to have to improve. They got just enough out of an undrafted free agent yesterday in James Robinson, but I don't think that that's going to fly going forward. You're not going to have games where your game script is this good that you go 19 for 20 through the air. But mega props to Jaguars. I think Gardner Minshew might be the real deal. And if they lose a lot of games, I don't think it's going to be because of him. Next game, Browns and Ravens. This one was pretty tough. Ravens win 38-6. I get the green check mark for calling this right. Ravens get the pennant for the win. The Ravens had a really good day. 275 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air for Lamar Jackson. This offense moved the ball down the field at will. On the other side, Baker Mayfield had a questionable day, and it's starting to look like he might be damaged goods from Freddie Kitchens last year. 39 passing attempts only gets you 189 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. That's not good enough for a quarterback entering his 3rd year. He needs to show that he's progressing. He needs to show that he can elevate the talent around him, move the ball down the field, and play mistake-free at the position. And so far, that is not happening. This is supposed to be a quarterback-friendly offense that relies on the run, uses play action to put them in situations where they throw receivers open, and we didn't see a lot of that. Yes, there's some silver linings. For the Browns, is there any silver linings? No, I don't think so. I take that back. I mean, the fact that he looks like he has chemistry with Jarvis Landry is pretty good. The Odell Beckham situation doesn't look great. They just lost David Njoku to an injury. I don't know if it's a 3-week IR or a full week IR. It just happened before I hit record. They have changed their kicker. There was a mixed extra point and a missed field goal in this game. So Cody Parkey is probably now your kicker for the Cleveland Browns heading into Thursday Night Football. The play calling was a little suspect given that first half fake punt. If I could give more advice to a head coach, here's my PSA for Kevin Stefanski. I understand what you're doing. You're trying to get momentum. You're trying to get the team hyped, and a fake punt is not a bad call. But in this situation where you are playing one of the best teams in the league, not just your conference or division, the league, that's maybe not the time to do it. You have an offense that you're playing against that can score at will in many different ways. Perhaps pump the brakes on the creativity and just try to pin them deep. You have Myles Garrett, who was probably the only highlight of the defense. He was the only one that looked like he was consistently getting in the backfield. Just a tough overall day for the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to be going into their next game with more questions than we had before. And at the very least, the schedule's favorable the next 2 weeks. They get the Bengals, and I believe they get the Colts after that, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong. But at the same time, Baker Mayfield needs to improve. On the Ravens side, check all the boxes. They look fantastic. Mark Andrews had a great game. Marquise Brown. Dobbins scores 2 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson has a great game. The defense played very, very well. High marks all around for the Ravens. Not much more you can say about that. All right, moving on to the next game on the docket. We have the Chargers and the Bengals. Not the world's most exciting game, but highlighted by a few key activities. Number one being the debut of Joe Burrow, the first overall pick in this previous draft. He gets 193 yards, an interception, and 1 rushing touchdown. The rushing touchdown is a great highlight. Go back and watch that and look at the awful pursuit angle that the safety took on the play. Just phenomenal. Josh Kelly makes his presence known, running back out of UCLA in last year's draft. 12 carries, 60 yards, and a touchdown. Other than that, pretty much a field goal fest, and the Bengals missed a field goal to tie it up late, giving the Chargers the win. I think this Chargers team is going to either, I don't want to say overachieve, they're probably going to underachieve, because as I keep saying for the last couple of years, that this roster for the Los Angeles Chargers is just so talented. They should be putting up more points. It's just a question of how much can you get out of Tyrod Taylor, and at what point in the season do we see Justin Herbert, and what does that mean when he comes in? Does that mean the season's lost? Are they trying to get a spark? It's just going to depend on the context when the time comes. As far as the Bengals go, I think this is what you about expected out of them going into a game with a rookie quarterback, no preseason, no real sort of offseason activities or programs to speak of. So I think for both teams, this is about as best as you can get with the offseason changes that they had. Moving on to the Bucs and the Saints. Now, depending on how much of this game that you watched, you would understand when I say that this about 3 or 4 times could have turned into the director's cut of Fight Club. Two teams that definitely don't like each other, Mike Evans being the main culprit. Brady has an interesting day, 239 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and one of those being a pick 6. So he's thrown 3 straight games for Tom Brady, excuse me, with a pick 6, which is not good. Michael Thomas has a pedestrian day, forgettable day, actually, a dud, 3 catches, 17 yards. And then the news comes out today that he has a high ankle sprain, and he says that he's going to try to play through it. He gets an extra day off with them being the next Monday night game. And it's just funny because I drafted Michael Thomas first round of fantasy football, and of course he's injured. The draft strategy this year was to go heavy on wide receiver, so I did that, as we'll talk about in the Fantasy Chat episode coming up in a few days. And my only healthy wide receiver is Will Fuller after 1 week. Go figure. Mike Evans has another non-existent day against the Saints. He's had a lot of these in his career, but he does escape with a touchdown. Yes, he was questionable with the hamstring, so that probably had a lot more to do with it. And if you're not 100% going up against Marcus Lattimore, you're not going to be productive. That's just the way it is. But the Saints win the battle of the quarterback greats, and we're moving on to the Cardinals and the 49ers. Cardinals, they get the banner for the win. I get the green check mark for calling this game correctly. Cardinals with the victory. Kyler Murray has a great game, 230 yards in the air, touchdown, a pick, 91 yards rushing. Jimmy Garoppolo, another example of the stat line lying to you, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. The misses that he had were significant because it shows you that he's not going to be a quarterback that wins them games. He's going to be a quarterback that they win games and he just happens to be there. It's the Blake Bortles effect. The most egregious example being the pass that he threw high where George Kittle got injured. It's just unless something changes, he's going to be productive in this offense because the way the offense is designed, and Kyle Shanahan is a damn good head coach. It's just I don't think he's going to be the guy that can elevate any further than he already has. DeAndre Hopkins has a career day with 14 receptions, 151 yards. Raheem Mostert has a great day with 151 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. Overall, the Cardinals are for real. I think that they can make some noise. I've been criticized for calling them a potential dark horse for the 6th seed in the NFC playoffs. Now, having seen it on the field live, this is definitely a team that can compete for a division title. So I tip my hat to the Cardinals fans for calling me out on that early prediction. Moving on to the Sunday night football game, the Cowboys and the Rams. Rams win, and the Cowboys lose, which I didn't expect, so I'm going to get the red X for that one. Rams get the banner for the win, 20-17. Prescott has a pretty neutral day, 266 yards and a touchdown. Couldn't really get going with Jalen Ramsey being a threat all over the field. Jared Goff has a game manager's type of game, 275 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. Malcolm Brown has a pretty standout performance getting the start with 18 carries, 79 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 2 big critical plays in this game that are going to be the takeaway is the 4th and 3 call by Dallas where they were in field goal range in the 4th quarter with a little under 12 minutes to go. Kick the field goal. What are you doing? I don't care what the analytics tells you in that position. Tie the game, because for the rest of the game, and as soon as they did that, I knew they were going to lose. Because for the rest of the game, you're struggling just to get back into field goal range, and it never happens. Mike McCarthy spent all this, offseason coming up with these new plays and studying all this stuff, and I mean, he even came out and said in the quote that was bullshit, that he sort of, overemphasized what he was doing, but Mike McCarthy looks like the same head coach that got fired from the Packers 2 years ago. And it sucks because I feel like I got scammed by him because I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. So joke's on me. The other significant play was the OPI call at the end of the game where Jalen Ramsey was pushed off of. I think that's a little bit of an embellishment on his part. There wasn't really enough contact, in my opinion, for that flag to be thrown. And I think OPIs at the end of the game, especially when it's close, is a crime against humanity, and those shouldn't happen because that took away from the potential tying field goal attempt, and we could have had an overtime game and an exciting finish on Sunday Night Football. Instead, here we are the next day talking about a referee call, which is really not the point. But anyway, that is my recap of week 1. So far for the week, I'm 8-6, having picked correctly the Thursday night game, so 8-6 so far on the season, 2 Monday night games to go tonight. I've got the Steelers and I believe the Titans. I'll have to recheck that, but I believe those are the 2 teams that I have picked win tonight. And then tomorrow we'll talk about those games and look ahead to the next week. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.